Hello, world, and welcome back to another interview for the Taxidermy Tech community. Today, I am talking to someone that needs no introduction for the Taxidermy Tech community, and that's because that person that I'm talking to today is my dad, who is Ken Darville. So it was really nice to get the opportunity to speak with him about Taxidermy Tech, where it came from, the experiences that led Dad to creating the community. So we hope that you enjoy this interview and we hope that it will inspire you to take a course at Taxidermy Tech or to get involved with the alumni and the Facebook group and to help to build the community into something that is beneficial for everybody and a space that everyone can learn from one another and feel supported and to feel that you aren't alone in your business endeavor. So, with that being said, and without further ado, here's my dad. So, the question that I start out asking everyone actually is what's the name of your business and where are you located?
Which business? Yeah, that's what it's come to. We started out as Expressions of Wildlife taxidermy, but at the same time, we started the Taxidermy Tech program. And so we are located in Pensacola, Florida, and we operate both services and training here.
So, the reason, maybe not the only reason, and we'll probably get to more reasons, but you're owning multiple businesses in taxidermy is because you've been in the industry so long. What I'm wondering is what led you to taxidermy in the first place, then, Dad?
I think most people get into taxidermy because they like to hunt and fish. One of the things that I've figured out, didn't take me long to figure it out either, is if you like to hunt and fish, this is the last thing you want to get into. But I'd always been a little bit of, I won't say an artist, I won't take it to that level, but I've always liked to draw, paint, sculpt, even back as a little kid. And yeah, even in the beginning, I looked at taxidermy as an art, but um, I had a very close friend of mine whose brother is one of the premier names in taxidermy going back to the 80s. And so I saw him in his early days of success, and I'd seen deer on the walls in my uncle's place. I've seen fish on the wall, and always represented for me the one that I didn't get. But when I saw some of the stuff that Tom was working on, it just piqued an interest in me. And so it really never was at that point. I wasn't much of a hunter or fisherman at that point. My uncles were the ones that would take me hunting and fishing from time to time when I got to spend time with them. My dad didn't do it. And so that's not really what led me into it. I think it was more of regaining that interest of what I saw Tom doing. It was just something different, and it fell right in line with art for me. But I did come to be more of a hunter and a fisherman. In fact, I became a pretty die-hard hunter. Um, but those were not the things that led me into it.
So, then how long would you say you've been officially involved with the taxidermy industry?
With the industry, obviously been doing taxidermy longer than that, trying to learn, but actually doing work for the public, um, I think about 33 years. 1990, yeah, 1991, yeah.
Very special year, indeed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And hint, hint, that's the year I was born.
Happy
So,
birthday, by the
okay,
way.
so yes, I'm as old as you in the taxidermy business.
Yep.
All right, let's ask, because it was such a long time ago, what did the industry look like when you first entered into the taxidermy business? And you can come from your mindset and then also from the kind of industry mindset.
I'm sure that there's a lot of people that I know that might even see this that were in taxidermy before me who perceived the industry different than I did at the time. When I came into it, I didn't know any other taxidermists. I had never had anything mounted myself, and um, I guess getting into it for me was trying to get to another level. It happened by accident, really. I looked in a catalog and I saw that there was competition, and I thought, we get to do competitions with this. It's like playing softball. We get to compete, um, I just didn't know what I was getting into it when I walked into a huge auditorium type convention center with a lot of other taxidermists, and going to those conventions showed me a side of it that I didn't see. And I know that a lot of the people who I knew who'd been doing it, or who I met at that point who'd been doing it, were, they've got, that's their perception of it. But for me coming in before that, I was just coming in doing work for the public. I thought that's all there was. You learn to do it, you figure out how to do it on your own because there's nobody really to show you how to do it. And if you get a booklet here and there, then that's great. And you can maybe go to the library and get some. We didn't have the internet then, so I would I'd get what I could get my hands on, and um, I just tried to figure out how to do it. And then somebody comes in the house and they like my fish or something's on the wall. Say, you do one for me, and uh, and I thought that's what taxidermy was. But it wasn't until I started competing that I saw that other side. And there's a lot of folks that I remember in my first days, my first conventions going in. Um, the I remember the first two people that I met, at the Alabama convention, the first convention. I'm sorry, that's not correct. The Nationals was, the World Show was the first one I went to. But when I went to Alabama, I remember the first two people I met. When I went to the Georgia show for the first time, I remember the first couple of people that I met, and still know all those people to this day. So it was booming. I think there was a lot of supply house type things that I didn't know were going on. A lot more available to me than I knew prior to going to the conventions and meeting other taxidermists. And I did find out that there are people that are willing to share information. And that entire process, learning that side of it, is what got me on another level. And I think there's a lot of taxidermists out there that don't ever see that side of the industry. That there are conventions and there are places you could go to get yourself to another level quickly and very quickly. I went from zero to hero in about 4 months. I went to the World Show and really, really did not do good. Didn't know what the standard was. Went to the second show a month and a half later and did a little bit better, but still was not nowhere near what the other people coming in the door were. And then 2 months later, I went to a third show. That's 4 months in, and I won my first best of category. And so, uh, that's one of the things. Conventions and competing, and then there's the meeting the other taxidermists and knowing that they're willing to share information and ideas and encouragement. I got a lot of encouragement from all of those shows in the beginning, and so um, that's kind of what it looked like. It started out as being um, uh, just doing taxidermy for the public, not knowing anything else existed. And once I learned that there was the side of it where I could compete, meet other taxidermists, and you know, congregate and fellowship with others that did what I did, it changed me. And had I not walked into that aspect of it, to that part of it, I most certainly wouldn't be here today doing it.
So, one of the things I was picking up on while you were talking about it is it kind of went from being alone in the industry, trying to figure it out, struggling because it's all trial and error. And then
Mhm.
what you find is when you go to compete, what you would think would be the most cutthroat place, it's actually where you find community, where you find people that want to help, and you find that that's actually the element of this practice that has benefited you maybe the most is being in touch with other taxidermists and having the ability to learn from each other and share with each other. And even in this environment of competing against one another, you actually find the fellowship and the camaraderie there.
Fundamentally, yes, and that's what it was for me. And you know, you tend to kind of stay away from the bad and focus on the good. And you know, there's some things in that community too that are not good, and it's just simply because a lot of folks, once they've tasted success, you know, it's hard to stay humble. And um, you know, this is one of the things that I've tried to pride myself on my entire life is to try to maintain, you know, a high level of humility. And so after I'd been in it a while, I got a bad taste in my mouth for some of it. But I mean, it's going to be there. You're going to see it, and so you got to focus on the good. And it did. It I did find camaraderie there. Like I said, there's a lot of those people that I still know to this day. And, you know, I'm not always in touch with all of them. I think Facebook's allowed us all to kind of reconnect in some ways. But there's a lot of really, really good people. And I owe a lot to them because I mean, that whole process changed me in a very short period of time and allowed me to continue with it because I would not have continued with it. I'll tell you, I walked into that competition room the first time. I looked around and I thought, man, I should not be here right now. And fortunately, I made the decision. Well, I say fortunately. Sometimes I think, you know, not so fortunate in making that decision because once you're in it, you're in it. But I made the decision to stay with it. And you know, I've had some successes, I've had some failures, but most certainly um, there is community in that world.
Yeah, well, from my perspective, your work's always been great, but I was really small when you first started out, so partial, I think. Okay, so then that's the first time going in. So then, from this perspective, the second time going in and re-entering the industry, because maybe a lot of people don't know, you took a really long gap from doing taxidermy in the early years, and then you took a break and started back into taxidermy only maybe a decade ago. So what's entering into the second time look like for you, and from what perspective were you coming from?
Well, I did leave it. I mean, you know, obviously I did most of the years that I was doing taxidermy. You know, throughout the '90s, I was still in the army and doing it on the side, trying to compete, do all that kind of stuff, and then when I left the army, I had a full time job to go to, and it was taxidermy. And we built a business, and for 3 or 4 years, well, about 3 years, we built a pretty strong business, and it about wore me out. At that stage, and we're talking almost 25 years ago now. So at that stage, I really wasn't prepared to run a full time business and have people working for me and dealing with all the things of running a full time business. And so after a couple of years, I'm getting burnt out, you know, and I was able to, a couple of guys that were working with me was able to, you know, watch them really develop and, uh, and, you know, that's a credit to them and you know, their persistence with it. But I was just grateful to have had an opportunity to have a hand in helping them in the beginning. Um, and you know, they grew up to be much better taxidermists than I ever will be. Um, but uh, I got burnt out, and I went back into defense contracting for 12 years. And I have to admit, I love that world. That's my world. That's a big part of my home, um, and I miss it. And I miss the the brotherhood that's there. It's very much like being in the army. Is you're working with a lot of the people that you were in the army with or did what you did, and so that's a very dear world to me as well. But you know, obviously, you know, a lot happened to me personally during that time, to us personally during that time, and there were some life changes, and um, I ended up getting remarried, and of course, your mom was part of that taxidermy world through the entire journey, and obviously part of the military world and most of the contracting world through that period. And so she had, you know, like all of us had grown accustomed to me being gone more often, a lot, and um, and of course, um, you know, later on, you know, we, you know, her and I didn't stay together, but when I got remarried, of course, Valerie, that's not the world that she knew. and so she was not as she wasn't at all accustomed to me being gone 49 weeks out of the year, and so um, pretty much got an ultimatum, you know, and you need to you got 2 years to get this out of your system, and that's exactly what she said to me. And then 2 years comes, and I'm thinking, yeah, okay, whatever. Well, there were some things that went on, that you know of, and some bad things that happened, and um, some people lost their lives, and I was always in a place where that was the high potential for me as well, and I was okay with that. I made peace with that, but not her, and she was ready for me to come home. That's the bottom line. And so I asked her, well, what do you want me to do? Because this is what I do. And she said, I don't know, come home, open a taxidermy business, and start teaching, again. And, I told her, Pat Jansen, hell, that's going to happen, And, well, here we are. And, um, wasn't an easy road. It wasn't an easy decision coming back and doing it. And I was afraid coming back in because I had a real distaste for some of the things I saw in the infantry, in the industry. Still got infantry on the brain. In the industry, when I had walked away before, and I didn't completely walk away. I just didn't have time to do any work, and I wasn't doing work for the public while I was contracting. If I got time to do a piece here and there for myself or whatever, I would. But there were a lot of political things. I've kind of become more hands-on politically in the industry when I left, and I left with a pretty good distaste. And coming back, I was concerned that I was still going to be there, so I stayed away from it. And my focus was getting the taxidermy business started and using Taxidermy Tech to do a little teaching on the side. So I didn't get really. I mean, obviously, I had to deal with supply companies and reconnecting with some of the people that I knew there. But I stayed away from any political involvement. I'd get phone calls sometimes, and but I stayed away from any of that. I didn't go to conventions. I stopped going. I didn't start going to the conventions again. In fact, we just went this June, the first time I had been to a convention in 22 years. And so coming back in for me was 100% about getting the business off the ground and getting it running. And I had a little more experience in running businesses. I had been working program management on just about on the majority of the programs that I worked on. I've been at some level of leadership, up to program and even country level management. And so I had a little better understanding of how to run a business. Not an expert. I've got a degree in business, and that business that degree didn't do anything for me when I run the business, But that experience as a contractor and working has helped me. So I didn't have any great illusions of regaining any love for the industry. My focus was on getting the business started. I just didn't know that things were going to go the way that they did. And at the end of the day, that has brought me back, I think, a little closer with the industry, and maybe in the future even closer.
Yeah, because now you're even moving into providing your own products and things like that, right? So there's also a different focus on the business than when you first entered. You seem to have a different, goal for this business than the first business.
Yeah, these businesses are like complete. Now I have no intentions of ever getting into the supply business, none whatsoever. And we're so backed up here trying to get caught up with the local work and then get that at a manageable level so we can continue to place more emphasis on the training. The product development piece started primarily to make us here and our network, the folks that are coming through training and going back that we're continuing to mentor and to establish our community with. maintain our community with. That was all intended to provide for us and for them, not for the industry, not for everybody. And so, we're doing some things. We've been, doing our own bird products, you know, heads and bodies and and now eyes. But that's something that we're doing to make us more efficient, not have to be dependent on the supply industry. We've got some initiatives to do. In fact, we've already started collecting and setting up bodies that we're intent on developing a line of small game forms. So that's already started in terms of setting up the bodies and freezing them and then breaking down the parts and getting ready to start molding and then eventually um, sculpting and then the process of remolding behind that. And we've done this, but we've not done it at the level that I intend to do it. But again, it's not intended to serve the industry. It's intended to serve our needs. And one of the things that I see happening with this business is us being a lot more customizing things a lot more, and getting away from the typical day-to-day work. That means less work. It also means higher prices, but this fits well with our Taxidermy Tech program, our internship program, and so that's the direction we're going.
Yeah, I think because I was here when we were doing kind of the refocus to supply, but I think one of the unintentional consequences maybe of that and the interns is that now there's this initiative to move forward with getting people to compete, getting people to go to competition, and people that are actually very interested in competing. So it seems like all of that focus towards kind of making products for ourselves, like duckbills and things like that, actually got deeper into creating everything by hand and having a better quality product, because now you're able to really make those pieces more, what's the word I'm looking for? More bespoke is the word that I want to use, but I wanted to do a different one.
We may not make it that far to where we're fully customizing everything, but I mean, a good taxidermist, and there's a lot of them out there. I know a lot of really talented taxidermists that every day in their shop they're doing alterations to commercial level forms and some level of customization, and we do that as well. Um, but the process of product development, it does help with primarily our internship piece. And obviously students benefit from that as well. But when we run the interns here, these are things that they're doing too, you know, our resident superstar Chloe, she did that with her piece. That was kind of the start. Chloe was the start of our intern piece, and that was a success. And she's is and will be very successful in this. Did very well in competition, and I suspect she will in the future. And I wanted other people to have that same opportunity. And you obviously um, had you had probably the greater hand in Chloe's success, because I didn't have as much time to give her as I wanted, and you were there to get her off the ground, and show her how to do things, that I was trying to make time for, and ultimately that worked itself out. But I want other people to have that opportunity. We did that, not expecting to do it, and it was very good for her, the right person in the right position with the right people helping, and I know that it's going to be the same for our other interns, and um, you know my next big superstar is Hannah, and she just left to go back down south. She'll be back here in a few months. But um, I've got four others out there that are just amazing people, and really an important part of our family here. And I want them to have that opportunity and the same opportunity. And behind them, I want others to have that opportunity. And product development is part of what they do in the process of learning. And so again, we're not doing this for the industry. We're doing this for our family here and for students who will be coming through in the future.
Yeah, so then let's move into, because we've talked a lot about the industry of taxidermy, and now you're hinting at some of the taxidermy tech instructors and the interns that are involved with that part of this endeavor. So then what was the purpose of actually building a taxidermy school? You talked about, you wanted to come back over. Well, you didn't necessarily want to, but you came back over unwillingly and then started the taxidermy school. And what was your intention behind it? What's the purpose of the school? And maybe how that's evolved?
Yeah. Well, first, we thought just to kind of step back a second, we were talking about the interns. Obviously, we have the interns. We also have, Chloe and Christopher are the two that work here. They are employees here, full employees here, and they both instruct, and they're both becoming amazing instructors. And I could not have continued to teach on the level that I was with the growth of the Taxidermy Tech program without those two. And um, it, it's and it's hard enough to do with three of us trying to do it. And and we're running doubles now. And in some cases working in the evening now on another, with another student to sort of help them with the schedule. Last week we had three going on. So I've got Chloe engaged, I've got Christopher engaged, and I'm working between them. But and then in the event I'm engaged with another, and so it's really grown. But the purpose, um, I had done a little bit of instruction in the past. I mean, in taxidermy, obviously teaching has been the majority of my career. I worked in multiple schools in the Army. I probably have, of all the years that I was in the Army, I probably have 6 or more years instructing. And as a contractor, with the exception of the 2 years or so that I worked as a regional manager and the country manager for American Canine on the security side of the house, the other 10 years was all training, different parts of the world. And so essentially my career has been about teaching and training. And so I knew how to do taxidermy, and I know how to, develop training. So why not put them together and do it in a more formal way? And it's not perfect by no means. Um, and we're growing it. We've got some great new ideas to um, fundamentally change the way that we're presenting the instruction, and then how we're mentoring it. But the purpose was to give other people opportunities to learn how to do taxidermy, pursue their goals, their dreams. And it's hard for some people who are not interested in this field to realize that this is a dream for a lot of people, to be able to, one, be self-employed, and two, I think that there's a misconception that when we're taxidermists, we're hunting all the time, fishing all the time, maybe. But it's just a part of that outdoor world that a lot of people love. And the majority of the people who come through here um, are are people who um, mid-career, early to mid-30s, not really happy with their career field, or looking for something to do after, and but a lot of them would really want. They know that they've got great jobs making great money with benefits, but they're really hoping that this is something that takes off for them, that they can move into that field of being part of the outdoors year round, and um, uh, um, maybe um, being self-employed. And I tell them all. I think all of them would probably attest to the fact that I tell you, there's a lot to be said for drawing a paycheck from somebody else. But I do recognize that it's important for a lot of people to try to pursue their dreams, and if I have a way or means of being able to help them with that, then that's our purpose.
So one thing I really want to take apart, and I think if people that haven't gotten involved in taxidermy take nothing else away from this interview, it's that you will not have time to hunt and fish unless you schedule your life that way.
Yeah, you have to be smart about it. You really have to be smart about it, because I lost my hunting privileges a long time ago, and it's hard to get back into it, once you've stepped out of it. But you know this probably as well or better than anybody that I've always been a workaholic, and to a fault a lot. And I can't sit still when I feel like there's something that I should be doing. And the older I get, the more determined that sense is. So, uh, and now I'm to the point where I got to make sure it's not killing me, and I do have time to do some things. But my interests now are not what they were. Maybe they will be. All these young people that work around here, they're all hunting fish, and they always send me pictures and stuff. I got this, I got that. I love it. I love to see that, and maybe that's what's going to motivate me to get back into it. But you mark my words, if you get into this, um, you will, for a period of time anyway, you're going to lose your hunting fishing privilege.
Yeah, yeah. So I definitely that's another thing that I hear you often tell people. So what is the purpose of the Taxidermy Tech network? So might be one of those things that taxidermists could share amongst each other, is that they won't have time for hunting and fishing. But I think there's something to being able to speak jargon with people and speaking from experience with other people that know what it's like to be on the flushing machine or things like that, that I've really noticed just from interviewing your alumni students and hearing the similar, grievances that people have. And it's just stuff you wouldn't know if you've never experienced it.
Yeah, absolutely. The it, it was unintended. Um, the we've called it for a long time a network. We're calling it now a community. And you said that, you're the first one to say that to me, and I thought that's more fitting. I've even used the term a family because we're close. I've maintained a closeness with a lot of the people in our network, and some of them are not even doing taxidermy anymore. But if you look at it, we've been doing this for almost 10 years. We had students here before we had customers, taxidermy customers here. And so, over time, as it got bigger and bigger and bigger, we've probably heard me in some of the ads, that we've had well over 300 people come through here. And, we're talking 1 week courses plus, in some cases. And so if you look at it over that period of time, that's quite a few people a year coming through here, and for quite a while. But over time, it really started to add up. You can remember a time where the showroom was covered with pictures, and then we run out of room in the showroom. We needed to put deer on the wall. We had pictures everywhere of people, and then we moved it all into the office, and this whole office was covered with pictures. And then we run out of room on the walls, and um, so there's been a lot, and we, as maybe more and more of those folks come through, I wanted to be able to reach back out and continue to provide resources, not just say, hey, I'm your mentor. If you got any questions, please call me. I wanted to be able to provide more. This is where the newsletters come in, and this is where even what you're doing with these interviews, is very important, because one of the most important things that we have, because folks get to see what's happened to other students after they've left, and as they develop their businesses, and in some cases hear some of the stories of things that went right, that didn't go right, or some of the things that they're doing to grow their business. So, and that's important, having people crosstalk and share information. We have a forum on the website. It doesn't get a lot of usage. Not everybody's on Facebook. And that's something that we've got to do a better job. I've got to do a better job of filtering information to that for the people who are not on the social media. We have the group page, and so uh, and obviously the resources that are on the website. And so it's getting bigger. There's more and more things that we're adding to the plate for the benefit of what I would call, our family, our Taxidermy Tech family, and always open for ideas. We did our first reunion event last year, you remember, and we're going to do it again this year, and hopefully that'll become an annual thing. So, and all these things we're doing are for the benefit of our Taxidermy Tech family, and so that's the purpose. but it was unintended. We didn't know. I didn't know we were going to have so many people interested in coming here, and I think one of the reasons they come back is because it's a kind of a one-on-one, it's a very personal thing. You're not in a room with a bunch of other people. It's an informal environment. This is a shop. This isn't, we don't have labs set up here, with everything pristine in places. This is a shop and crap everywhere half the time because we're working on so much stuff. And but we have a closeness with everybody that comes in here. So it's that sense of community which has made that bigger and stronger every class, every month, every year.
Yeah, it's one of the comments that a lot of people have too, is that they appreciate the mentorship continuing after. Because especially with taxidermy, it's one of those things where once you get home, you forgot everything you just learned. And then you got to go try to do it, and you have to do it to learn. So that's one thing that people comment on probably the most. And then what I wanted to say about this endeavor to interview community members really came from that project of researching taxidermists, and it was women in taxidermy that I was looking at. And what I noticed was one of the first women, Martha Maxwell, the only reason there was any information about her at all was because her sister had written a biography of her. And so it just kind of, taxidermy in itself is already an industry of storytelling. Every single piece tells a story, and different stories, because it's the artist, it's the person that went out and harvested, it's the, all there's a lot of different stories that come from one piece. So telling the stories of the students so that they can learn from each other, and then, just know more about each other, felt really like part of the mission, to really get people. I could just sense it and hear it from you when we would have conversations, and I'd see all the students on the wall, their pictures, that the part that you're really trying to push was them to mesh together and learn about each other and learn from each other.
And that's happening. We've got some that are doing work for others, wholesale work. We've got some that are we got some of them hunting together, just and reaching out to each other for help. I could tell you several stories about how that has evolved, and it's just it really makes me feel that what we're doing here is right by developing this community, and I hope I have the energy to continue to do it. You said something about the women in it. And I always, if there's ever an opportunity to make a point about that, I want to do it because you doing those articles in the newsletter. I appreciate that. And I learned a lot from those articles when I came into it, and I first became aware of other taxidermists. And this was somewhere between. Me getting into it and doing work for the local public. Not so great work, by the way. They all loved it, but I didn't. Time would tell for me just how not good my work was. Um, but somewhere between that point and the point of actually getting in and going to competitions and actually meeting other people, I began to identify mostly through books of other people that were out there in the industry. And believe it or not, initially the biggest influences for me and the things that I like to do in taxidermy were women. And Jan Van Housen, I don't even know if I met her once. She judged my first piece at the World Show in '95. And I think it's Van Heusen. But Wendy Christensen, who worked at the Milwaukee Museum of Natural History, and Gene Roll. And to say that I didn't know that they were women would be an untruth. But it just never occurred to me. It was nothing I thought about. Oh, these are women. That's weird. It wasn't weird to me at all. They knew something I didn't know. And I saw the stuff that they were mounting in these books, and I thought, that's what I want to do, and you read a few things and maybe learn some things that they're doing. Again, we didn't have the internet at that time, so it was, things that I could pick up, a Breakthrough magazine, probably the biggest thing that I could look at and see some of the kind of things that they were doing. And I think there was a publication that was called North American Taxidermy News at one point, and so these were women, and for some reason, when people find out that the majority of the folks that are actually physically here, working are women, um, and that probably um, certainly half of the people who apply to come here are women. It seems to surprise people, and I put myself back in their shoes in the beginning, and um, that aspect never crossed my mind that really that they were women. They were artists to me, and they knew something I didn't know, and I wanted to be like them. And obviously, I met other people along the way, and I heard other names and saw other things. But those were some of the ones that really stood out to me. Jan and Wendy, especially, And so, for me, it's very important to me and gratifying to see women here doing it and excelling in it, and women out there that have become a part of our family out there excelling at it. So it's very important to me. And I have three daughters, by the way, and I want to see them succeed too.
We've all tried our hand, and I don't think any of us really enjoyed it.
No,
What are you hoping to accomplish with the project of Taxidermy Tech? Getting women involved in this industry? Because that was pretty much, I think I saw mostly women during my time here. It was a higher percentage of women coming through when I was working here.
and I won't say that's not the same in any other schools. There's a lot of women. I mean, by virtue of the fact that the internet's come along, there's um, and I spent, we're a lot of years into that period of time. We're probably not as many years, maybe 20 years into an era of search engines where the search engines were strong enough to carry enough information that brought a lot more people into the industry. And you know, uh, yeah, we have more and more um, uh, women living and working independently. We have for the last 20, 25 years or so. And I think that's been progressive in our society for the last 50 years. Women have become more independent and taken over. And quite frankly, that's what I want to see here. I, I, I want them to run it, and I want them to have that opportunity to grow into it and run it, so I can do some other things. Um, I have a lot of faith in all the people we have here. Poor Christopher's the one. He and I are the two holdouts. Um, and Christopher is obviously a key player in our future Zodiac program, which we're not going to talk about here. But that's pretty much going to leave the women to run the show, and I trust that they will do well.
One thing I wanted to kind of comment on is something that you mentioned earlier. So obviously one of the objectives is that one-on-one teaching. And I don't know if you want to go too far into this, but something I wanted to mention is another community that you were attempting to reach out to, that it was a little bit more difficult, which was through the VA, and attempting to get this program into something that could be funded by the VA for veterans. And the problem was it was required that you had multiple students per class. So I wanted to maybe see if you wanted to comment on that, because the mentorship part, the one-on-one, is so important to people. It's one of the main things people comment on. And so there's a barrier for you in your attempt to outreach to that community.
Yeah, obviously that community is important to me too, because that's where I came from, and the benefits that I got from my years, educational benefits, was what paid for my bachelor's degree. Didn't drop a dime into graduate school, but it paid for my bachelor's degree, and I'm grateful for that. And I really wanted to see, others have an opportunity to use their benefits to be able to do it. And by the way, long before Taxidermy Tech, and in the very, very early days of my contracting period, the contracting period almost ended early because we were trying to start another program that was going to be training, and um, we were in Columbus, and so there were some things that happened that created some problems with local government, but at that point, at that time, we had been approved by the VA and under basically our current model. And it was it started when we had a guy that wanted to come through. I was doing a little side instruction. I'd have people come. They stayed with us. We were living at Paprika at the time, and we were out there, and I was out there in the garage teaching. And I had people come and stay with us, and I still know some of those people to this day. And but I had been approved by the VA under the old under that old model, or under the current what we're doing that basically under what we're doing now. But things were different in VA then. They didn't have those requirements. They did. It was the old self-employment program, and they had those requirements where they're really trying to get more bang for their buck. So the more students they could send, the better. And the longer that they could keep them with me, the better. But then I didn't have the ability. I was working in contracting, and I didn't have the ability to run multiple weeks, and I didn't have the ability to didn't have the facility to run multiple students, and I didn't know how big it was going to get. So I wasn't at that point really wasn't willing to step out there and take the gamble and walk away from my day job. But I had been approved, and coming back into it this time, uh, and I did pursue the VA in the beginning, um, and we were picked up again as a vendor under the Taxidermy Tech name. But now things have changed in VA, and they wanted to. The old self-employment program didn't exist in the same way that it did, and they wanted to put some of those requirements on us and hold us through it. Plus, there were some folks there that were in the decision-making process that were a little bit biased against what we were, the type of things that we were doing. There was even one in there whose comment came back after it had gone all the way up the chain. His comment came back and said that I don't think that there's going to be many people interested in doing this. And it's just that's ignorance, and it was also probably somebody who doesn't hunt, doesn't fish, doesn't appreciate the importance of even basic wildlife management, and how hunting and fishing play a role in that, and just ignorance. We've been attacked by the anti-hunting community before, and so this was just probably another one of those people who they're not in that world, so it wasn't important for them to go out of their way to help somebody else who was trying to get into it. But we get those calls all the time from people, and but now it seems that VA was putting the screws to us and telling us, well, you're going to have multiple students, and you're going to have to run, multiple weeks. And I'm willing to give on the multiple weeks, but not not under our our current model, although our current model is evolving, um, where we have multiple students. Now, I will say this: um, I told you we're running doubles now, and we could, as long as everybody was here, we could run a triple. But I don't want to do that because if somebody got sick or something, then we're holding the bag on somebody else's time and money. But as our internship program evolves, as we have more people that are you know are showing their abilities, as their abilities grow, um, I can see a time where we have 4 or 5 instructors here, in which case we might be able to meet that requirement where we're running multiples. But one of the other things about running a one-on-one is that people can schedule pretty much when they want to come, and that may take some up. We might, if we were doing it for VA, we'd have to set specific dates and have specific class fill, and we're just not there yet. I certainly am never going to have a whole group of people with one instructor or 2 instructors just going around. It's got to be each student has to have a dedicated instructor, and Right now, that limits us to about 2, worst case scenario, 3. So it may come a time in the future where we're able to do it, um, but I've not been willing to bend on that. And so that does exclude some people, unfortunately. And, I wish them the best. If I can do something for them, I will. Um, but until we come to we get through this stalemate with the VA, then that's what it's going to be, or increase our capabilities.
Yeah. Yeah. And now it's a lot better because you have a lot of people working here, a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
able to keep eyes on. So I think that there's definitely growth happening. So I'm wondering if you wanted to comment on any future plans, if the future looks any different, or what you're seeing as far as how the trajectory is going.
Well, with the internship, that's, I said the other day, I've made this, actually, this was a post that I made that, um, I've asked the Lord many times why He allowed me to live. There's been 7 distinct times in my life that I can remember that I should not have survived, and I did. And I've asked the Lord many times why, and I've always been waiting that there's this big thing that I'm supposed to do. Everybody thinks that there's this big thing that they're supposed to do in life, and and I've just kind of come to realize that maybe it's just as simple as, outside of taking care of my family the best that I can. Maybe it's just as simple as that. What I'm doing now is my purpose, and um, I love all the students that come through here. Um, the Obviously you and Aaron and Summer and Christopher and Corey are my babies, my kids. But these interns and and employees here are my family too. These are my kids too, and um, so it's really important to me that they can step up and take over and, just be their thing to run. And so I do see uh, those those folks teaching. By the way, we've got a very communal environment out here now. We're not locked in a little room with a student anymore. We've got a very communal environment, so there's a lot more um, sharing of information. We're all out there talking, and in some cases, maybe we shouldn't be. Um, but in other cases, we'd be talking about something and somebody else pipes in on an idea and says, yeah, this is the way I do it too. That's good. But, as long as we all recognize that there's more than one way to do it, then that that works. That works really, really well. Because we all have different experiences, different ideas, different ways. I'm always open to that. But that allows, just having that environment allows the folks that are your interning. They're not only learning through doing, they're learning through teaching too. Because they're sharing with somebody who's never done something that they've learned to do. And that to me is the most fulfilling thing that I do, is to just kind of go out there sometimes and watch what's going on and see where they're what where they've evolved to, and just think about where they're going. That's more important to me than anything I'd ever do.
Okay. Well, I always end everybody's alumni interviews asking them what they have to say to you. So I'm going to ask you if you have anything you want to say to alumni, to Chloe and Christopher, everybody involved in Taxidermy Tech Network. What's your big message that you want to deliver here?
Obviously, the alumni are um, that's the core of our Taxidermy Tech family. And I appreciate having had the opportunity to work with all of them, continue to work with them, and just still be close with them. Taxidermy is just a vehicle, and there's so many things that you can accomplish. It doesn't matter what the vehicle really is, but it's what you do on the ride, and so for all of those people, that's been very important to me to take that ride, and for Chloe and Christopher, you know, um, they're my back here, and I love them both very dearly. They're, you know, my, they're, I've got a lot of kids. telling you, I got a lot of them, and I love them all. And I think you can remember that when you were a kid and all your friends coming around the house too. Those were my kids too, and I see them on Facebook growing up with kids, and sometimes I just sit there and I get just misty eyed, and emotional, and I'm not known to be an emotional guy, but I love them all, and the interns, um, that's now a big part of my purpose, and um, I just I appreciate all of them, and I respect all of them for doing this, for putting up with me, because you know better than anybody. It's not easy to work for Dad, and I'm kind of another dad around here. Um, um, I'm not always the easiest to work for, um, but I can't even begin to tell you how important the network is to me, the community, the family, how important um, the employees and the interns are to me, and how important you are to everything you do, because you have completely changed through running the front end of the house here when you were working here, and all the great ideas that you had about how we can not so much marketing the business, but really growing it through um, through the use of social media and podcasts, and these are things that I've not really considered, and obviously these are things that are very high on the list of importance now. And your interviews, they're important to me. Sometimes they're hard to watch because just you get to the end, you start talking about me, and I don't like talking about me, and when other people start talking about me, but I love them all, um, Valerie will tell you, I'll be sitting there boo-hooing like a little baby, but that should tell you how important, because I'm you may not know me as a man of few words, but most people do, and certainly not somebody that gets very emotional, but you and everybody in our network are very, very important, and I appreciate everything you've done, and I appreciate all of them.
Well, I appreciate you, and I appreciate the network and being able to document these stories, because that's what it feels right for me. That kind of feels like my purpose, is seeing the value in social media and podcasting as a way to promote yourself, a way to document stories and record people's efforts. Because I think another thing too that kind of comes up as a common theme, that you got an opportunity to learn two different things, is you got to learn taxidermy, and then you got to learn how to run a business. And I think the biggest thing about the students when they come through is that it's one thing to learn taxidermy and to do taxidermy. It's a whole different thing to run the business part of it. And so this is something that we're hoping to provide to the alumni, is a way to kind of just have an easy promotion, an easy way to promote themselves and to share amongst each other, but also for people to see into this world.
Yeah, and you've done a good job with it too. I couldn't imagine how important it is for me to see these interviews now, and I know we talked about it, and then you pitched it, and we talked about it, and I couldn't imagine what it would have looked like, and even the podcasting we talk about, potentially for this, but certainly for Zodiac, um, and so the more, if you were not involved in it, I mean, I wouldn't really know where to go with it, and but these interviews and it's not that it's just important to me to see it. Um, I love to see what everybody's doing, and I love to hear their ideas and the things that they're trying. But it's the rest of the community that it's really important for, and because some of them are in a different stage of that journey, and it helps them to kind of get some ideas to help them navigate where they're going.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for building this community.
Because I've become a kinder, gentler version of me here in the last few months, last couple of months anyway. And that's by design, because I'm trying not to be a grumpy guy. But I used to tell them when I'd walk out there when it was time to leave, I'd tell them, beat it. And that's what everybody's to go home. So, beat it.